So to give us some context for the legal considerations, we have Robin Jacobs from the Community Law Center.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm a staff attorney at Community Law Center. I put packets on almost all of the chairs. There's a few extra ones up here. I'm just going to... So Community Law Center, we're a legal services organization that provides advice to nonprofit organizations and community associations. So that's really everything from helping nonprofits get started to dealing with property issues, which is relevant here, to liquor board, 501(c)(3), all of those different areas, even employment law and intellectual property. So the most relevant piece here is really the property issues probably, and some of the zoning and vacant nuisance properties, which Community Law Center has been a long time strategy of ours to deal with the vacant properties using legal tools. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can do that. I am an attorney, so of course at the beginning I'm going to give a disclaimer. I cannot give you any legal advice. We have an intake process. Every legal situation is different and depends on the facts and circumstances of the case. So please, feel free to call me and go through our intake process, but you really should get specific advice about what it is that you're planning on doing. If you're doing a for-profit project, I'll have to say I can't help you with that. Community Law Center only works with nonprofit organizations. If you're a spinoff of a nonprofit, we might be able to get you in. But just to let you know, if you're for-profit, there's a couple other very limited resources, but free lawyers are hard to come by, so we're limited to nonprofits for the most part. So just at the outset, I want to kind of get a sense of the people in the room. How many of you all have already started your projects? Okay. Oh, great. Okay. How many of you are working with or planning on working with a group of people? How many of you think that that's it's like a formalized group of people, like a nonprofit? Okay. Great. Thanks. That's helpful. Oh, how many people are just working on their own or planning on doing stuff on their own? Okay. All right. So these are all different. You guys are all kind of over the map. But I'm just going to give a quick plug about why it might be helpful to consider working with an organization if you're not working with an organization, specifically a more formal organization if possible. Baltimore City has a lot of strength in its neighborhoods, and a lot of that strength lies in the neighborhood associations. And neighborhood associations are generally made up of the people that have been in the community for a really long time, and I think that they possess a lot of knowledge and resources about their community. And as somebody, if you're coming into a new community, if you're new to the neighborhood, they might be a really valuable source of information for you and a really good project for your partner.
And can I just give one little plug on that?
Yeah.
The next workshop, which is the second Wednesday in May, we are going to have a couple people talking about starting their urban farms, and they'll be here with representatives from their community association talking specifically about that relationship. So.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that that's going to be a continuing conversation. Mm-hmm. If you're not sure who your community association is, the city does have a community association directory. It's sometimes not quite up to date. It's like a self-updating thing. So, if you have trouble figuring out who it is, you can contact us. We're usually pretty knowledgeable about most of the city and who the community association is in the area. If there isn't an active community association in the area you're working, I would encourage you to look at other possible nonprofit partners, such as a church, if there's like a university even, or some other anchor institution. And the reason for this, the legal reason for this is really what an organization can bring is kind of longevity to the project. So hopefully all of your projects will last forever, but none of us individually will last forever. So that is why an organization is good, is because when I go to incorporate a new organization, in the document that I file with the state, it says it's perpetual. That means it exists forever until it dissolves or goes bankrupt, but I'm not going to talk about that. So, so part of the point is that it will, you'll have a group of people to rely on that will go on for perpetuity. those are that's just, we always talk about sustainability in kind of this green way, and this is like the legal way of thinking about sustainability for whatever it is you're doing. Another piece that a nonprofit or an organization, a formally created organization, brings is liability protection. So I think corporations get a really bad rap these days, which is fine. They probably deserve it for the most part. But nonprofit organizations are also corporations, actually. So one of the reasons they're corporations is because it protects the individuals involved in the project. So anytime any individual is going out doing anything, you can be sued for it, right? So if the organization does it in their name, it provides a layer of protection for the individuals involved. So then if somebody wants to sue, they sue the organization rather than you as the individual. So that's part of the protection that just having that corporation involved brings to your project. And when I say corporation, I also mean nonprofit organization as well. Not all nonprofits are formally created that way, but call me and I'll find out for you. Actually, I'll tell you how to look it up yourself. So the other piece to this is just, I mean, Community Law Center was actually founded by someone who really believed, Ann Blumenberg, who believed that there's strength in organizing and numbers and kind of the intersection between organizing and the law. So what we think is you have more power as a group of people than you do on your own. And that's definitely true in Baltimore City with the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods can bring a lot more to what you're doing than if you're just doing it on your own. And then finally, the other piece I wanted to point out, if it's a nonprofit organization that has 501c3 status or 501c4 status, they might be eligible for grants and funding. People can donate things and it's tax deductible. So that's a very valuable tool that a nonprofit can bring to your project. Like I said, if your intention is to do something and make money at it, you're not going to get 501c3 status. It's just blatantly not allowed, basically. So keep that in mind. This would only apply to 501c3 and 501c4s. And I teach a whole workshop on how to get 501c3 status, and it is fairly lengthy and hard to go through. So if you want to do something next year, I would get started now. If you're planning on starting a nonprofit, because there is a lot that goes into it. If you're thinking about other business forms, like I said, if you're thinking about a for-profit, there's other ways of structuring things. I would just still encourage you to talk to an attorney because it is fairly complicated. And it's important to get it set up correctly at the beginning. It'll save you a lot of trouble and money in the long term. So I think that's everything I want to say about. That's my pitch for working with an organization. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to deal with a vacant lot that is, for the groups that haven't gotten started especially, a vacant lot that is privately owned. So the first step really for any piece of property is who owns it. If you own it, you're done. Great. I have nothing else to say to you really. But chances are, I think most people in the room working on a lot that they don't own? Maybe raise a hand. Oh, okay.
Some people might not have land identified yet.
Okay, or if you don't have land identified, even better. I like to get involved as early as possible because lawyers take a long time to do that. So the sooner you come to me, the better. I have a greening case right now that started January 2011. I'm not done. So it can take time, and one thing I'll say is, for better or worse, property rights in this country are like tight. You know, like you can't upend somebody out of their property very easily, and the one exception to that is nuisance law. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So first, find out who owns it. The easiest way to do this is to look up the address on the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation, or SDAT for short. There's a link in the handout I gave you. You can also just Google SDAT. The real property search, you pick Baltimore City from a drop down, and then you put the number and the address in. And that should tell you, there's like a little bit of lag time on it, but it'll tell you who owns the property and what their address is. So you can get a fair amount of information just from that source alone. It's public information about who owns it. If a business owns it, so if the owner has the letters Inc. or Corporation or LLC at the end of its name, then you're going to look at the SStat business entity search. The purpose of all of this is you want to get as many addresses as you can for the owner. So you want to figure out who is the owner and where do I get in touch with him or her. I'm kind of assuming if you're talking about a vacant lot that the owner's not there hanging out every day so that you can talk to them, but I'll talk about that a little later too. The other place to look is Maryland Land Records. This is where you can actually find the deeds for the property, mortgage information, all kinds of legalese on there. You have to have a password, but it's free to register. So that's another place you can look for more information about who owns the property. Or again, you can talk to an attorney and we can do a lot of that research for you. It can get very complicated who owns a piece of property in Baltimore City. People die and their wills don't get sorted out, and people leave, people go bankrupt. It's really all over the map. So the second step to dealing with a vacant nuisance property is negotiating with the owner. So like I said, if the owner is there and hanging out, you can talk to them about it. If he's not there, we're going to have to write a letter, right? So before you do that, though, you want to kind of build a case about the nuisance. So if you haven't started your work yet, and you're dealing with a vacant property in the city, chances are it's going to be a nuisance. So a nuisance is basically trash, weeds, debris. It's something that's like a blight to the rest of the community. It's interfering with the community's right to enjoy their space, basically. So this is why I'm saying, like, nuisance is kind of this exception to property ownership. It's like where you're abusing your property rights and they're getting in the way of other people. It actually goes all the way back to England. It's the oldest environmental law that's on the books. So I don't know why you guys would be interested in that, but I think it's fascinating. So it does have to be a nuisance. So that means if you've already gone onto the property and cleaned it up, it's not really a nuisance anymore. So that's kind of the tough piece we get in. So to build your case, take pictures, keep a log, work with that community association, because chances are that they've been complaining about that lot for years, and they've probably already built that case for you. Call 311, keep records of all of the 311 calls, write it down. I'm a lawyer, I like stuff in writing, I like paper. So that's kind of how you build your case that it's a nuisance. And this becomes important because the third step, oh wait, I guess I got these steps out of order. Anyway, so then next what you're going to do is write a letter to the owner. And there's also a handout you should have, this is two-sided, about how to write the letter and kind of what the self-help nuisance abatement law is about. This just explains what you need to put in your letter. You need to be specific. Keep in mind that owner probably owns a bunch of properties, unfortunately for us. So be specific about the address. Let them know, like, hey, your lot that you own at this address is, it's got mattresses on it, it's got, trash bags. Clean it up by this date, or we're going to go in and clean it up. That's basically what you want to say. Give a date and be specific. If you can get the community association, again, power and numbers, get the community association involved. It has a little more heft kind of coming from a group of people than just one person complaining about a piece of property. So the important things to make sure you're doing is giving notice, because that's a legal term of art. And you want to make sure you use the term nuisance. And if you have the wherewithal to look up some of the violations of the code, put in the references to the code as well. If you want us to write the letter, I would encourage you to work with us too. We'll look up all the references to the code and put them in there. So that's the other option. So what you're going to do is you're going to send this letter, certified, return receipt requested, to the owner. and I'm just going to guess that they're going to not want to sign for it. It's just going to come back to you unopened. Keep it. That's your proof of notice. So that's the proof that you tried to get in touch with the owner and you said, hey owner, you're interfering with our property rights. If you don't do something about it, we're going to do something about it. And then that gives you the limited right to go onto the property and clean it up, basically. It is a very limited right. I would say, like anything where you're, definitely if you're raising animals or anything like that, you're probably going beyond the scope of cleaning up the nuisance. And again, you know, it's probably I mean, it's definitely less of a right than what you would probably get under the adopt-a-lot agreement. You know, you don't have a signed agreement with anybody. That owner still owns that property and could come back at any time and do whatever they want with their property. It's their property at that point. If you want to buy the property, I mean, maybe the owner is behind on their taxes. Chances are they are. Check it out on the tax sale foreclosure list. You could, you know, you could go that route if you really want to get into the property ownership route. But that's going to be a bigger and bigger investment. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, the third thing I was going to talk about is just kind of other legal considerations. I'm glad Abby talked about zoning because I really don't know zoning very well, but anytime she said anything about a rule or wiggle room, that's when a lawyer could be helpful, basically. So anything in the code that you're just like not sure if what you're doing fits within what the code says, I would say talk to an attorney, especially if you're dealing with a situation that involves a hearing. I think we have a pro bono case going before the zoning board next week. It can be really helpful to have representation in that situation. I don't think the zoning code is like super intuitive even with the rewrite. Definitely helpful to have somebody that knows their way around that. And actually on the flip side, I mean, it could be helpful for you going in to get permission to do something before the zoning board to have an attorney. On the flip side, if you're, you know, gardening and have your adopt-a-lot or have your self-help nuisance abatement letter in place, and the owner comes back and decides, like, I want to build a huge mall on this lot. They probably have to get zoning permission to do that, and you could go in and oppose them and say it's not in the public interest for them to do that. So, you know, a lot of times if they want to build something, they'll have to get, as Abby was talking about before, they'll have to get permission from the zoning board to do that, depending on what the zoning code says for that lot. So, it could be a way for you to defend your garden as well, and that's something we do regularly at the Community Law Center. If there's a development going on that the community is opposed to, that's something we could represent the community on, saying it's not in the public interest. We don't always win, but we can try. So let's see, a couple other issues. For nonprofits specifically, especially 501c3, and 501c4 tax exempt organizations that are very formalized. I think that a lot of really big agricultural, something like along the lines of a farm, could be an issue for what's called by the IRS unrelated business income tax. So, you know, nonprofits are recognized as charitable to do charitable activities. That's why they get a tax exemption. But if you decide to go beyond just charitable activities, those other activities could be taxed. So that's why I think it's important that you set this up correctly at the beginning with some legal advice, because it can protect the nonprofit that's involved as well from taxes. I think there could be a very good case to make that if you're reducing blight or providing a lot of food to the community, that's recognized long time as charitable activities by the IRS. But maybe if you're starting to make like a really big profit and you're farming, I don't think farming on its own is recognized by the IRS as a charitable activity. So again, that's something you're going to want to carefully construct in terms of the law, and just something to look out for. I know there's definitely a lot of nonprofits that have kind of for-profit enterprises as part of them. They just need to realize that that activity will be taxed. It's a taxable activity. And same, like if you're selling things, luckily you don't have to worry about sales tax on food, so that's good. But if you're selling like bumper stickers or t-shirts or something, there's sales tax to worry about, and there can be some tax issues involved. And that obviously is my area of expertise, which is why I'm talking about way too much, sorry. So, and the agricultural stuff with animals, I'm not going to talk about because I really honestly don't know it. Once you're talking about animals, I think you're in a whole other ball game, and I don't know the law very well, but we could look into it. Again, I talked a little bit earlier about liability concerns. You know, you never know what can happen if you're using power tools or anything like that. If you're doing anything that involves volunteers, if you've got kids, I think children are considered a high-risk activity almost always. So, sorry kids. So, you know, you just want to make sure you've got some protection in place. Insurance can help with that. You can also, you know, try to get waivers signed. They're of limited enforceability, but again, that's something an attorney can help advise on. You know, and then the final thing, you know, we just say it over and over again, is just, if you don't own the lot, just remember that. So any investment you make in the property, keep in mind it's not your property at that point. Obviously, ideal situation is you end up in the land trust, and then you've got the insurance protection, and that means the lot is then deeded to that use forever, hopefully. We wrote a little one-page thing up about adopt-a-lots and legal considerations, talking about liability and the license termination. We're just, as lawyers, we just want people to go in with their eyes open. We don't want to discourage anyone from doing it, but we just want you to be aware of what the limitations are, what you're signing, and make sure you understand it. So that's really our role in this. So finally, just a couple things about the resources available. So, like, we do a series of workshops in the fall and spring around nonprofit legal issues. There's one coming up about starting a nonprofit if you're interested in that. I teach that next week. We also have one coming up about inserting the community in development, dealing with community benefits agreements. I'm not sure that's very relevant to this crowd, but if you're interested in development and stopping development, or using the community's leverage to get development to be beneficial to the community, there are definitely some environmental components to that work as well. And then we have some publications on revitalizing Baltimore's neighborhoods, which talks about nuisance law, talks about liquor board, and those kinds of tools that the community can use. And finally, I brought a few applications for legal services. Like I said, if you're interested in getting an attorney involved, that's kind of the first step. We just have to get some basic information about the organization. We do kind of require at a minimum that the organization have a board, a budget, and bylaws. And bylaws we can help you write if you need help with that. So we do charge an application fee. It's a sliding scale. It basically starts at $100 and goes up depending on your organization's budget. It's negotiable, so just talk to us if it's a problem. That's the only fee. There's no legal fees associated with us. So that's the good news. I think that's everything I have.
Thank you.